What's up guys, welcome back to Cooking with William, where today we're going to be making homemade tortellini. Let's do it. Alright, so to start your tortellini, we are going to make my pasta recipe. I already have a video specifically for this pasta recipe, so go ahead and click that iCard if you would like to see a more detailed version, but for now I'm just going to run through it very quickly. It is a very simple recipe, starting with 2 cups of white flour. Go ahead and make a well in the center. This is where your eggs and oil and salt are going to go. Go ahead and crack 3 whole fresh eggs right into the center of that well. It's okay if a little spills out, but try to keep it all contained. Season that with a pinch of salt and a few tablespoons of olive oil. Now you just have to combine everything together and knead the dough. Again, there's a whole video in the link in the description, but it's pretty self-explanatory if you've done it a few times. Now, just like in the pasta video, we are going to start rolling out our pasta using a pasta roller. You could also just use a rolling pin and try to just get it as thin as possible, but a pasta roller makes this a whole lot easier and more even. If you're using a pasta roller, you probably don't need to go to the thinnest section. I would recommend going to about 7. Once you have completely rolled out your pasta, you should have a nice sheet just like this. Be gentle if you can, it's very fragile, and then go ahead and flour both sides of it just to keep it from sticking while we're working with it. Now we need to cut it into our individual sections. We just need general squares. The exact size doesn't matter. I like to shoot for between 1 inch and 1.5 inch squares. The easiest way to do it is to just cut off the edges and then cut one long cut right down the center. This can kind of give you a good idea on how wide to make them, and just cut squares, just like this. I'm using a knife here, but this can also be a lot easier with a bench scraper if you have it. It makes it easier not to cut your counter since they're not as sharp. I ended up with some uneven pieces here. I just ended up boiling those later and tossing them in some olive oil as a snack. Now that we have our squares, you're going to want to just flour all of them on both sides pretty well, just to keep them from sticking to each other before we are able to shape them. Now it's time to make our filling. I like to make a lot of extra filling because it goes in a lot of good pastas or even as a pizza topping. So I start with a pint of ricotta, about 1.5 cups of mozzarella cheese, a pinch of salt, about 1/4 cup of olive oil for extra flavor, and then you can throw kind of whatever you want in there. I like some fresh black pepper as well as about 1/4 cup of basil, and I like 1/4 to 1/2 cup of freshly shaved Parmesan cheese. This is really a blank canvas though. You could add oregano, you could add red pepper flakes, you could add a little bit of nutmeg. It's really whatever you want. I like to just freeze this in little bags so that I can use it in future dishes like ravioli or pasta. And now we can go ahead and start forming our tortellini. I like to use a greased baking sheet like this just so nothing sticks. And then you just take your square, add about a teaspoon to a tablespoon. You don't want to completely fill it up because it needs to close, but you want enough in there that there's not much air. Go ahead and use an egg wash mixture, so that's just 1 beaten egg with a splash of water, to lightly dab one of the edges with egg. This acts as a sort of glue with the flour that will help keep everything closed even when it's boiling. Go ahead and fold it over and pinch it together so you end up with a nice triangle pocket of pasta. Now this is basically just a triangle ravioli. It's not super special yet. What turns it into tortellini is taking one more little dab of your egg wash mixture and adding it to one of your corners and bending it around. This is kind of similar to how some people make wontons. It's a great shape because it will help hold on to a lot of the sauce when you toss it at the very end. This is a pretty easy pasta shape to make overall. You'll get it with practice, but this was honestly my first one and it turned out pretty well. Go ahead and make the rest of your little pastas. I think about 6 to 8 tortellinis are best per person because these are pretty big, but obviously make yours smaller, you'll need more. Now if you want to save these, go ahead and freeze them, and then once they're frozen solid, you can put them in Ziploc bags and keep them in the freezer for a few months. But I'm just going to stick mine in the fridge until I use them later this day. Now we can talk about the sauce. You could really do any sauce that you want, but I'm just going to make my sauce by starting with some fresh prosciutto frying in the pan. I'm just going to let it cook in some olive oil until it gets nice and red and crispy. I really like crispy prosciutto because it adds a nice salty crunch to the pasta. It's really nice in these rich dishes that tortellini can tend to be. Go ahead and take out all of your crispy prosciutto and let it rest on a towel, leaving as much of the oil as you can so you can saute 1/2 of an onion. Go ahead and let that cook down until it starts to get nice and golden brown. This adds a lot of nice flavor to the dish and a bit of sweetness. Now we can add in 2 to 3 cloves of chopped garlic as well as a few shakes of red pepper for heat. Go ahead and saute and fry that until it gets nice and fragrant. Be careful not to burn the garlic, it will make it taste pretty gross. And now we can add our crushed tomatoes, just 1 full 18-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. Stir that until everything is nice and combined and the flavors have had a chance to get to know each other, and then just let it cook for 30 minutes to up to 2 hours when you're ready to cook. After about an hour and a half for me, you should notice that the tomatoes have thickened a bit and darkened in color. At this point, I like to add about a half cup of fresh grated Parmesan for flavor. Go ahead and stir that in until everything is melted and combined. And then just to add a little bit of richness, about a half to a 3/4 cup of heavy cream goes a long way. Go ahead and mix all of that up together until you get this nice beautiful pink sauce. I ended up making way too much of this pasta, so I actually saved about half of it and left it in the freezer, but go ahead and judge it based on your amount of tortellini. Now here, go ahead and taste your sauce and season it with salt and pepper just to make sure everything tastes right. I also like to add just a splash of balsamic vinegar. When things cook for a while, they tend to lose some of their acid, so this really helps brighten it up. And then also add in your salty, crispy prosciutto. Stir all that up, just let those flavors get to know each other for a few minutes before adding in your cooked tortellini. This freshly made tortellini is really easy to cook. You just put it in salted boiling water until the tortellinis start to float, and then they're fully cooked. If you kneaded your pasta dough long enough, they should not get too soft while cooking and they should stay together. I like to add in a handful of spinach and just stir that around until everything starts to wilt, and then your pasta is ready. You could serve it as is, or you could top it with a little fresh black pepper and some freshly grated Parmesan cheese. And there you have it, some nice homemade tortellini with a from-scratch pink sauce. This is really a great way to spice up just a regular pasta weeknight meal, especially if you make the tortellini ahead of time. It's not too hard. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe.